since productive people tend to do things right instead of wasting time on doing the same things over and over again. In today's video, I want to go over 6 things that I see productive people doing. Of course, there are things you have to do again and again to really get good at it, like copywriting and investing. But unless these things are necessary or you really enjoy doing them on a regular basis, I'd rather be organized in the first place and save that time for the stuff I love or to be really productive. If you look at it this way, being organized makes you more productive, freeing up time for all the good stuff in your life. And even if you already know one or some of these 6 things, do you really apply all of them in your daily life? Let's find out. Number 1. Productive people set things up in a way that is useful to them and that actually works in the digital renaissance based on their own experience and experimentation, not simply based on dogma, static, conventional boomer advice or how other people did things in a pre-internet world. One of my favorite books with regards to experimentation and validated learning is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, where he challenges conventional business practices, advocating for a flexible approach that involves building a minimum viable product or MVP, testing market assumptions, and quickly adapting based on customer interactions. And this actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But of course, not everything that people do or say is based on sense alone, nor do these people have your interest and future in mind. So ditch the dogma or hidden agenda if it doesn't make sense to you or doesn't comply with your values. Question conventional ways in a world where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, short VUCA, are constantly increasing, and keep experimenting with your processes and the way you organize your life. So you're doing things as effective as you possibly can, and most importantly, the way you want them to. Hashtag OwnFoundations. Number 2. Productive people don't rely too much on their brains to store information because they understand that our memories has flaws. Things fade. So when they want to remember something, organized people put it into a system that they trust. I use Obsidian and partly Notion, for example. Now, what exactly separates a system that you can trust from one that you can't, from one that's probably going to fail you? There are a few things to consider. A system that you can trust is one that is not going to lose your data, which Evernote has done with several of my audio files, unfortunately.
No bueno.
This also rules out your brain, because our brains forget things all the time. But it also rules out pen and paper, at least if you don't keep handwritten notes backed up in some other way, such as digitizing them, which is no fun and horrible for search later on. On the other hand, you've got systems that are designed with data retention in mind, like Obsidian Sync, which I use, or if you integrate Obsidian with third-party cloud storage services like Dropbox, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, or anything else that has redundant servers across the world to make sure your data is backed up and safe. Even if the computer where you recorded the stuff ends up breaking somehow, gets burned up in a fire, or otherwise gets destroyed. For your important data, I always recommend to have at least one offline copy in place, and you can check out my video about the 3-to-1 backup strategy later in the video above. B. A system that you can trust needs to be easily accessible. To-dos in Obsidian, for example, are always on my phone with me, easily accessible, and that means even off the grid, without internet access, wherever I go.
Nice.
Of course, you need to be online at some point to have all your devices synced, so whatever device you're using later then can easily find even the most recent stuff you're looking for. And C. That system you trust needs to be well organized itself and easy to search. So whatever app or tool you decide to use, make sure that it has a logical file or folder system, a usable search tool, and that the naming and linking convention makes sense to you. Third, organized people make sure to label things, especially when they aren't going to use them for quite some time. To give you an example, the desk in front of me has a bit of hardware wired together to make this video possible, which I try not to touch, except for instances where certain things need to be replaced because they break, need to be upgraded, or because I'm moving. So of course, I've labeled the many cables sticking out, otherwise I'm not going to remember what all these different cables were connected to. So when I relocate, it's easier to reassemble my whole video setup. After labeling everything, I could even let someone else do the setup in another place again. That's how easy it has become with labeling. Now, this is just one example, and there are plenty of other things in your analog or digital life that you should be labeling to reduce future frustration and save time for stuff you love. Number 4. Productive people build what Thomas Frank likes to call a mindfulness loop, by which you constantly go through the different dependencies in your life and basically check upon them.
But hang on, Mo, what do you mean with dependencies?
Basically, every single organism in existence, down to the most simple single cell, has things that they depend on, like water, or else without them they just die. And what is true for these cells is true for you, your business and investments, except for that it's more complicated. So for example, if you want to build your own business, you're ultimately dependent on the customers who like and buy what you have to offer. To get your message or product out there these days, you are dependent on channels like Twitter, X and YouTube. And if you don't have the money needed, you're dependent on investors to give it to you. Likewise, if you are an investor, you have dependencies too. You are dependent on good and unbiased sources, research about the target company that you can base your due diligence, models and investment decision on. The point is, whoever you are or whatever you do, there are many things to keep track of, many dependencies. And it's here where one of the biggest differences between productive people and disorganized people can be found. Because disorganized people are constantly being caught off guard by one of their dependencies, needing some kind of maintenance, whereas organized and productive people are constantly looking ahead, trying to figure out what they might need to survive and thrive in the future. They have this mindfulness loop constantly running in the back of their mind. Have you figured out your most important dependencies yet? And prepare accordingly? You might even want to create some kind of mind map to visualize the most important dependencies in your life. And with this conscious thought of all the different angles and aspects to your life, over time it's going to sink into your subconscious mind and your mindfulness loop runs on autopilot. Number 5. Even in times of digital abundance, productive people live by the mantra, 2 is 1, 1 is none. Essentially, this means to have a backup of anything you use on a regular basis, especially if running out of that thing in the middle of your work would kill your entire workflow for the day. And to give you a quite analog example, the camera that I'm filming this video on right now relies on a battery to run. And if that battery were to die during filming, I have an extra battery that's always on the charger, ready to go. Because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. If the battery ran out and I didn't have the backup, I wouldn't be able to film and might not even get a video out on time. And the same goes for many other things in life, starting from food, beverages, hard drives, to having multiple cold crypto wallets and even several bank accounts these days. So just remember, if the collapse of something or running out of something would cause an interruption in your life, make sure you have a backup. That way you can use the backup, go on with your life and then replace it when it's convenient for you to do so. And finally, on number 6, organized and hence more productive people are very deliberate about what they own, what they buy and what they choose to keep. Now, I am probably not a minimalist when it comes to technology, but I only buy things that have value, high performance, and bring me joy. I don't keep things around to clutter up my space. Instead, I only surround myself with items that primarily spark joy. Applying parts of the KonMari method by Marie Kondo, which she speaks about in her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, the Japanese art of decluttering and organizing. And I think this is something we should always be aware of. The more stuff you own, the more energy and time you have to spend maintaining, storing and organizing the stuff. And this can become a burden in itself, particularly if freedom is your ultimate goal. And there's a reason that people like Ali Abdaal just got rid of all their stuff to be free and travel the world with only 2 suitcases. And it's a good thing to remember that organized people don't spend more time and energy than they have to on organization. Organization is a means to an end and nothing else. What really counts is your output and how productive you are. So be deliberate about the things you surround yourself with or buy. Ask yourself, am I buying this because it'll bring me joy or utility? Or am I buying this to impress somebody else? Beware of the latter. Avoid status games in your life, says Naval Ravikant, which can be applied in this context as well. And likewise, with the things you already own, ask yourself on a regular basis, do I still need to keep this? Does it spark joy? Is it really useful or just taking up space? If you like this video, check out this video here.